Welcome to the debate. We are looking at a global landscape today in April 2026 that has fundamentally rewired the very definition of human labor. Right now, something like 85% of Fortune 500 companies have deployed artificial intelligence operations at scale.
Yeah, at a truly massive scale.
Right, and we aren't just talking about chatbots here or, simple automation. We are talking about agentic systems, software that doesn't just answer a question, but actually takes actions, breaking down complex business goals into subtasks and just executing them without a human ever clicking a button.
Which has, obviously slashed operational costs.
Exactly, by up to 50% across the board. And that's driving an unprecedented surge in global GDP. So the core argument I want to explore today is that this hyper-automation is actually a profound democratization of wealth. We are shifting away from a centuries-old model of repetitive wage labor into this era of high-value AI-augmented orchestration, which I believe opens up massive global prosperity.
Well, it certainly opens up unprecedented corporate efficiency, I'll give you that. But I look at that exact same landscape and I see, honestly, a terrifying consolidation of structural power. Yes, wealth is being generated at blinding speed, but it's deeply concentrated at the top.
You don't think the capability is being democratized?
Not in the way you're framing it, no. Instead of democratizing capability, we are aggressively displacing millions of workers and replacing traditional, stable careers with a hyper-competitive, deeply precarious environment. We are building this borderless arena where the baseline just to survive economically is impossibly high.
And that friction right there is the central question we are exploring today. Are we building a borderless utopia of augmented workers, or are we hardwiring a new tier of social inequality? And specifically, what happens to the student walking out of a university today, stepping directly into this arena?
Which is a daunting prospect.
It is. So let's start with the sheer mechanics of this prosperity because it changes how we measure human value. For the entirety of human history, your economic value was tethered to your physical or mental exertion, right? It was a simple equation. Input equals output.
Right. More hours shoveling coal, more distance covered by the ship.
Exactly. But AI completely severs that link. Output now fundamentally trumps input.
Well, it severs the link for the enterprise, yes. When you don't need a human to perform the sequential steps of a task, the enterprise can scale infinitely without scaling payroll.
But it also scales for the individual. Look at the macroeconomic projection from PwC. AI contributing $15.7 trillion to the global GDP by this year.
Right, but who is capturing that value?
A lot of people on the ground are. Because AI operates on a principle of absolute abundance. It generates content, predicts demand, optimizes logistics instantly. And this isn't just trapped in corporate vaults. We are seeing incredible democratization of earning power.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why.
Wait, let me just give you a tangible example first. We have freelancers in the Philippines using AI platforms like Jasper to write 10 times faster. They aren't just typing faster, the AI is generating the baseline text, and the freelancer is acting as a creative director, editing tone and structure. They've fundamentally increased their hourly earning capacity.
For now, sure.
It's happening everywhere. Gig workers in Brazil leveraging AI routing to boost their total rides by 20% a day. This is tangible prosperity. The World Economic Forum projects 97 million new AI-related jobs.
I completely understand why those individual examples sound optimistic. But we have to look at the structural reality of what happens when you scale those anecdotes. Democratization is a very strong word to use here.
You think it's inaccurate?
I do. Because what you are calling efficiency for the enterprise very often equates to outright obsolescence for the worker. You cited the 97 million new jobs from the WEF, but we cannot ignore the other half of that ledger. 85 million jobs are actively being displaced. We are systematically hollowing out the middle of the labor market.
I don't disagree that displacement is happening. But displacement isn't the same as destruction. It's a reallocation of human capital.
Reallocation?
Yes, those individuals are moving from low-leverage tasks to high-leverage tasks.
Reallocation? is a very sanitized word for what is actually happening on the ground, this transition heavily favors those who already control the capital and the infrastructure. High-income nations are seeing massive GDP boosts, while global tech giants build data silos that lock out true competition.
But individuals are still finding ways to leverage those systems.
Let's look at the mechanisms of how these jobs vanish, though. JP Morgan's LOXM system is currently executing 50% of their equity trades autonomously. It isn't just doing math quickly, it's using natural language processing to read millions of pages of earnings calls instantly, evaluating market sentiment and executing trades before a human analyst has even, finished their morning coffee.
Right, which is incredible efficiency.
But a human analyst is structurally incapable of competing with that matrix of risk evaluation. Or look at teleperformance, replacing 70% of its human agent capacity in the Philippines with fine-tuned large language models.
But that's exactly my point. The human doesn't need to compete with the algorithm on speed. The human needs to direct the algorithm. Moving from that massive corporate scale to how individuals actually earn a living today, we are seeing the rise of what the source material calls intelligence as a service.
Which is just gig work rebranded.
No, it's entirely replacing those missing rungs on the corporate ladder. We are seeing independent prompt engineers earning $100 an hour. We have sole proprietors running no-code agencies, building robust, enterprise-grade applications for $5,000 using platforms that combine visual interfaces with AI backends.
They are making money right now, sure, but what happens to that prompt engineer when the AI systems become sophisticated enough to engineer their own prompts?
They adapt and manage the higher-level strategy.
You are framing this shift as an upgrade to job security, but it is actually a profound downgrade. You are taking someone out of a stable salary with benefits and a predictable career trajectory and dropping them into a mechanical Turk AI swarm.
A mechanical Turk swarm? I think you need to explain what you mean by that.
Okay, so the mechanical Turk is the illusion of automation. Historically, it was a chess-playing machine that actually had a human hidden inside it. In our current economy, companies deploy these massive AI systems that appear autonomous, but they are actually supported by an invisible swarm of global gig workers performing microtasks.
You mean like data labeling and RLHF?
Exactly. Labeling data, correcting edge cases, tweaking prompts. These workers are not building careers, they are performing highly precarious task work. They are constantly bidding in a hyper-competitive, borderless arena where main competitor is essentially an ever-improving software update.
I get that.
You are training the very model that will eventually render your specific task obsolete.
I see why you view that gig work as precarious, but let me offer a different perspective. Look at the scribes in the 15th century. Their entire economic value was tied to the physical act of manual transcription.
Are we really doing the printing press analogy?
We are, because it works. When the printing press arrived, yes, the job of the manual scribe was obliterated. That was highly disruptive. But the printing press drove down the cost of information, which exploded literacy, which created modern commerce, the scientific revolution, and entirely new categories of human endeavor.
The printing press didn't write its own books, though.
But the principle of leverage is the same. We are doing the same thing with intelligence today. We are freeing people from the geographic lottery. A developer in India can now seamlessly serve a U.S. client by leaning on an AI copilot to bridge language gaps and accelerate their coding by 80%.
But the expectations change.
Sure, but the data clearly shows that half of all jobs augmented by AI copilots are seeing earning boosts of 15 to 30%.
That printing press analogy breaks down the moment you look at the nature of the technology. As I said, it was a static tool. We are dealing with an autonomous, self-improving intelligence. That is a fundamental difference. And regarding those earning boosts,
Yeah.
employer expectations always scale with the technology. If an AI copilot makes you 10 times faster, an employer does not say, great, you can work fewer hours for the same money, or I will pay you 10 times as much. They expect 10 times the output for the exact same baseline pay.
Well, they expect more value, yes.
The standard for what constitutes a normal day's work shifts drastically upward, increasing burnout and pushing the worker to the absolute brink just to maintain their current standard of living.
But isn't that pressure just the friction of an evolving market? I mean, the enterprise efficiency we are seeing fuels profits, and those profits create entirely new consumer demands and new markets for human-centric services.
Let's talk about those enterprise shifts then, and who's actually reaping the majority of the financial rewards. If individuals are forced to operate as fragmented, gig-based orchestrators, constantly fighting algorithm changes, the true beneficiaries are the massive monopolies consolidating the underlying infrastructure.
I don't think they're monopolies, they're platforms.
Look at the absolute scale of corporate AI today. Amazon is managing nearly 2 million daily orders using predictive models that scrape competitor pricing and adjust millions of SKUs per hour. They don't just react to the market, they dictate the market.
Which dramatically lowers systemic friction and drives down the end cost for consumers.
But it also creates impenetrable monopolies. These massive systems act as invisible AI CEOs that capture all the value. How does a mid-sized regional business possibly compete with Amazon's reinforcement learning pads in their supply chain?
They don't have to build it from scratch.
They can't. And BlackRock's Aladdin platform, it manages $21 trillion. It stress tests portfolios in seconds across a multidimensional matrix of global events. United Health processes 1 billion claims a year using neural networks that spot patterns instantly, denying claims with terrifying efficiency.
That is a very compelling point regarding the massive scale of early adopters like BlackRock. But I would argue that the source material shows clear, undeniable evidence of borderless democratization that directly counters that monopoly effect.
How so?
You ask how small businesses compete? The answer is that they don't need to build the model, they simply rent the capability. This is the infrastructure argument. The interstate highway system didn't create shipping monopolies, it allowed a small local farm to ship goods across the country. Small and medium enterprises in Vietnam can now compete globally precisely because they have affordable access to cloud AI services.
They have access, but at what cost to their autonomy?
The cost of a basic software subscription. Look at Shopify's 2 million stores worldwide. They thrive on AI for dynamic pricing, automated inventory forecasting, virtual storefronts. Generative AI scales supply infinitely.
But they are dependent on Shopify.
Before, if you were a small Mexican artisan, you could produce maybe a few product variations a month, constrained by physical materials. Now, you can use generative design connected directly to an on-demand manufacturing API, testing thousands of variations in real time, matching global demand perfectly without risking a single dollar on physical inventory.
Okay, but
They are orchestrating a global supply chain from a laptop. This completely rewires money-making into a collaboration with intelligence rather than a competition of capital.
they might be orchestrating it, but they don't own the highway they're driving on. They are entirely dependent on the ecosystem of the tech giants. They don't own the AI model, they don't own the cloud compute, and in many cases, they don't even own the underlying customer data.
That's true of any cloud service.
They are essentially digital serfs renting land from massive technological lords. If the algorithm changes or the subscription price for that API access quadruples, their entire business model evaporates overnight.
Dependence on shared infrastructure is how all modern economies work. No business owns the electrical grid, but every business uses it to generate value. But let's bring this grand global enterprise perspective down to the specific reality of an individual.
I think we should.
Let's look at the student, a 21-year-old graduating today and stepping into this exact market we've just described.
If we accept the reality that the economy is now a network of highly efficient, borderless gig workers renting tools from massive corporate AI monopolies, the reality for that student is deeply daunting. I would actually call it a crisis.
Daunting, because the traditional playbook has been thrown out, yes, but also incredibly rich with unprecedented opportunity to bypass decades of corporate ladder climbing.
The playbook hasn't just been thrown out, the ladder has been sawed off at the bottom rung. The traditional entry-level jobs, junior coding, basic data analysis, standard customer service, are gone.
Well, they're evolving.
We are looking at Vodafone's AI resolving 80% of all UK customer issues completely autonomously. Those entry-level jobs didn't just exist to provide cheap labor for the company. They existed as an apprenticeship system.
Right, to learn the business.
You learn the complexities of a business by doing the mundane, repetitive tasks. You saw the edge cases, you understood the workflow. If those tasks are completely automated, the bridge from novice to expert is burned. How is a student supposed to get the experience necessary to become this high-level orchestrator when the AI handles all the baseline work?
The mechanism for gaining experience fundamentally has to evolve. You don't learn how to manage a modern logistics network by physically carrying boxes in a warehouse, and you no longer learn software architecture by writing boilerplate code.
But what do they evolve to? What is the practical step for a new graduate?
It's a shift in focus.
Because relying on universal basic income pilots in places like Finland or India is not a career strategy for a young person trying to build a meaningful, independent life. The demand to continuously upskill, to constantly learn the next tool just to remain minimally employable, creates a psychological and economic exhaustion that we as a society are entirely unprepared for.
That is a very real, structural challenge, what we might call the experience paradox. But the source material is quite specific about the strategy here. Students must adapt by focusing on areas of abundance rather than scarcity.
Meaning what exactly?
They need to step out of the mindset of being a purely operational worker, a person who just executes a task given to them. The path forward is to upskill in areas like prompt architecture and AI ethics. There are robust courses for this now, and to strategically niche down into domains where AI fundamentally cannot replicate human capability.
Such as? Because the boundary of what AI cannot replicate shrinks every single week.
Empathy, complex stakeholder negotiation, navigating ambiguity, ethical judgment, making creative leaps across entirely disparate domains of knowledge.
Those are very high-level skills.
But they are essential. An AI system is brilliant at decomposing a well-defined goal like maximize supply chain efficiency into thousands of subtasks and executing them. But a human being has to define the boundaries of that goal. A human has to determine if maximizing that efficiency destroys a critical vendor relationship. The human frames the problem. The AI solves it.
I understand the theory, but listen to what you are actually proposing. You are asking a 21-year-old, fresh out of university, to immediately possess the high-level strategic oversight, the nuanced stakeholder empathy, and the complex judgment of a seasoned 50-year-old executive.
Well, not immediately.
And they have to demonstrate this incredible wisdom perfectly, just to justify their hiring over an agentic software swarm that costs pennies an hour. That is an impossible standard for a beginner.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. The data clearly shows that hybrid human-AI teams consistently outperform pure AI systems by a factor of 2. Pure automation hits a ceiling when it encounters novel, unstructured problems.
Sure, but for how long?
Long enough to build a career. The mandate for a student today isn't to beat the machine in raw processing power, and it isn't even to have the accumulated wisdom of a 20-year veteran on day one. The mandate is simply to become the most effective human half of that hybrid equation.
Which is a heavy burden.
If an AI can write the application code in 3 seconds, the student's value isn't in knowing the syntax. Their value is in sitting down with the user, deeply understanding their specific frustration, and directing the AI to build the precise solution. It's curiosity applied through technology.
But you have to acknowledge how incredibly fragile that human half of the equation is becoming. Look at the infrastructure they are relying on. We are dealing with models that operate as black boxes. They have severe data silos, they hallucinate, and they possess incredible systemic fragility.
Systemic fragility is exactly why humans are needed.
We saw this with the massive global outages in recent years, where a single flawed update in an automated pipeline took down critical networks worldwide. When the system inevitably breaks, or when it optimizes for the wrong metric, the student orchestrator is left holding the bag for an intelligence they do not fully comprehend and cannot manually fix.
Which is exactly why system resilience, oversight, and operational ethics are massive growth sectors for new graduates. Navigating the limitations of AI, understanding where the data silos are, verifying the outputs, catching the hallucinations before they hit production is exactly where human economic value is currently concentrating.
That requires a lot of agility.
It does. It's about being the pilot who knows how to fly the plane when the autopilot disconnects.
Agility is a luxury for those who already have a safety net. For the 85 million displaced workers, or the students staring down a mountain of university debt, agility feels a lot like a free fall.
I wouldn't call it a free fall.
We're talking about hyperautomation where AI agents self-design their own optimized processes. The gap between the average human's capability and the machine's capability is no longer a step, it is a chasm. Yes, the Mexican artisan can use generative design to sell globally, but they are now competing against millions of other AI-augmented artisans, all utilizing the exact same tools, fighting for the exact same fraction of consumer attention.
But it expands the market.
It creates a brutal race to the bottom for prices and a race to the absolute top for the required effort just to stand out.
I don't believe the structural evidence supports a race to the bottom. If anything, the democratization of powerful tools raises the absolute floor of what everyone can produce. It eliminates the barrier of capital. It forces the market to compete on genuine human creativity, distinct point of view, and taste, rather than just who can afford to hire the most coders or build the biggest physical factory.
It raises the floor, yes, which means the minimum viable product just to survive in the economy now requires mastering complex system architecture, managing digital ecosystems, and constantly fighting algorithmic changes.
It's a new baseline.
That is the very definition of hardwiring a new tier of social inequality. If you cannot maintain the relentless, exhausting pace of upskilling required to direct these systems, you are entirely locked out of the economic gains.
Well, we have covered immense ground today. Let's look at the complete picture as we wrap up. From my perspective, the evidence strongly suggests that this automation is fundamentally rewiring how value is created. It is no longer about trading physical time for wages. It is a collaboration with intelligence.
Right.
It offers unprecedented prosperity, clearly visible in the 15 to 30% earning boosts for those who adopt AI copilots and transition into orchestrator roles. The trillions of dollars in new GDP is real value being created and distributed across a newly borderless arena, allowing anyone with a laptop and curiosity to participate in global commerce.
And my stance remains that this rapid transition is fraught with systemic peril. We are watching 85 million jobs vanish, while wealth heavily concentrates within automated enterprise ecosystems and massive tech monopolies.
The transition is definitely messy.
Very. The tools might technically be accessible to everyone, but the structural power and the underlying capital are absolutely not. For the student entering this market, the total disappearance of entry-level apprenticeship roles means they face a landscape where the penalty for falling behind the technological curve isn't just a missed promotion, it is total economic irrelevance.
I think where we absolutely converge is on the reality that the era of traditional wage labor is over. The historical idea that your economic output is strictly bound by your physical input has been permanently broken.
I completely agree with that. The job market is now a borderless, highly fluid arena. Technological fluency, rapid adaptability, and AI augmentation are no longer just competitive advantages for the ambitious. They are the baseline mandatory requirements for basic economic survival.
Exactly. The source material paints a highly complex, nuanced picture of this transition. The future of this AI-augmented economy, and whether it leans toward utopia or dystopia, depends entirely on how society manages large-scale reskilling, how we navigate the inherent fragility of these interconnected systems, and how effectively we can ensure that the infrastructure of intelligence remains accessible to the individual.
It will require intense vigilance, because right now the technology is moving significantly faster than our institutional ability to manage it.
It certainly is. And it leaves our listeners with a critical concept to evaluate. Think back to that massive steam-powered ship that defined the industrial economy. The ship is now fully automated. It is steering itself across global economic waters, and the engine room is completely empty.
A ghost ship.
In a way, yes. The manual labor is done. The defining question for anyone stepping into this economy today is whether you will approach this future as a creator of new value, figuring out how to command the ship from the bridge, or if you will spend your entire career exhausted trying to outshovel a machine that never sleeps. Thank you for joining us on The Debate.